Power is a phantom. It is rarely seen in its true form, preferring to cloak itself in more palatable costumes: philanthropy, progress, intellectualism. For decades, the world of Jeffrey Epstein was the grandest of theaters, a meticulously staged production of influence. He was the enigmatic financier, the patron of theoretical physics, the charismatic host who could conjure presidents and Nobel laureates to his dinner table. This was the facade, a brilliant and impenetrable fortress of respectability. It was engineered to dazzle, to disarm, and to distract from the sophisticated and dark machinery operating just beneath the surface. For this was not merely an empire of wealth, it was an architecture of control, an enterprise designed not just for personal gratification, but for the systemic capture and leverage of the powerful.
To understand this sprawling exploitation network, we must resist the temptation to focus only on the man at its center. Instead, we must perform a clinical autopsy on the system itself, the psychological vulnerabilities and sociological laws that allowed such a predator to thrive in the highest echelons of society. This is not simply the story of a monster. It is a forensic examination of the habitat that created him, protected him, and empowered him.
Welcome to UmbraDecode. Every closed system, from a living cell to the highest strata of human society, has a perimeter defense. It has gatekeepers designed to repel threats and maintain integrity. The primary question of the Epstein saga is not what he did, but how he, a college dropout of humble origins, bypassed these defenses with such astonishing ease. The answer is a masterclass in multi-stage social engineering, an infiltration executed with the patience and precision of a siege. Phase 1 was the construction of a myth. Epstein's past was a carefully curated narrative. He was the math and physics prodigy from Brooklyn who, despite lacking a degree, was deemed brilliant enough to teach at the exclusive Dalton School. He was the ambitious trader at Bear Stearns, whose genius for finance was too vast to be contained by corporate rules. These were not lies so much as embellished truths, seeds of a legend planted in the fertile ground of Wall Street ambition. Phase 2 was the weaponization of capital. The true catalyst for his ascent was his relationship with billionaire Leslie Wexner. After ingratiating himself with Wexner, Epstein was eventually granted extraordinary power of attorney, effectively becoming the gatekeeper to a colossal fortune. This was the critical event. He didn't just have money, he had control over someone else's vast, legitimate money. This gave him a credibility that could not be questioned, and it funded the creation of his gilded world: the Manhattan mansion purchased from Wexner, the private jet, the island. These were not mere luxuries. They were his armor, his credentials, his signifiers of belonging. Phase 3 was the intellectual Trojan horse. Epstein understood that for the truly powerful, money is mundane. The ultimate currency is intellect and novelty. He branded himself a science philanthropist, creating foundations and pouring millions into complex fields like evolutionary dynamics and artificial intelligence. He didn't need to be a genius himself, he just needed to rent the genius of others. By funding legitimate, brilliant scientists, some of whom continued to accept his money even after his 2008 conviction, he purchased a halo of intellectual legitimacy. This allowed him to host dinner parties where Nobel laureates debated theoretical physics, creating an irresistible allure for other powerful figures who wished to see themselves as more than just rich. They wanted to be part of the great conversation. This led to the final phase, becoming the indispensable network hub. He didn't just join the elite, he created his own elite ecosystem where he was the central star. He connected financiers to scientists, politicians to artists,
To be invited into his circle was to be granted access not just to him, but to everyone else in his orbit. He had breached the fortress, rewritten its rules, and made himself the new gatekeeper. The system wasn't just compromised, it was conquered. A predator of this scale cannot hunt alone. He requires an ecosystem, a carefully balanced habitat of complicity that allows the darkness to fester. The Epstein operation was enabled by a complex human network, a pyramid of complicity with distinct psychological profiles at every level. At the apex, his direct conspirators, and beneath them, a far broader base of enablers, bound by the hypnotic appeal of power and the paralysis of self-interest. The role of the chief accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, cannot be overstated. She was far more than a subordinate. She was a partner in the operation. Possessing the aristocratic pedigree and social fluency that Epstein lacked, she was the validator. Her presence acted as a powerful psychological anesthetic, normalizing the grotesque and putting both targets and elite guests at ease. She allegedly acted as the recruiter, the groomer, the handler, the smiling face that made the unthinkable seem acceptable. She formed the dark center of the Epstein saga, a woman who appears to have been exceptionally dedicated to arranging his life and facilitating his operation. Beyond the inner circle lies the broader phenomenon of willful blindness. This is not ignorance, but a deliberate cognitive choice to not know. The human mind is engineered to protect its own comfort, status, and worldview. For the guests on Epstein's island or the attendees of his lavish parties, asking the obvious, uncomfortable questions carried an immense social risk, expulsion from the elite club. The benefits of access, the business deals, the networking, the proximity to fame and power far outweighed the moral cost of suspicion. This is the engine of elite impunity. When a group of high-status individuals are brought together, a powerful diffusion of responsibility occurs. If a prince is here, if a former president is on the flight log, if a celebrated scientist is accepting his money, then surely, the thinking goes, my own presence is permissible. Each powerful guest served as a moral alibi for the next, creating a conspiracy of silence where no explicit agreement was ever needed. They were trapped in a collective action problem, where the first person to break rank would lose everything, while those who remained quiet retained their standing. The silence was not empty. It was a deafening roar of consent. The Epstein operation was not simply about exploitation. That was merely the raw material for a much larger, more patient project, the acquisition of leverage. At the core of this project lies a tool of psychological warfare perfected during the Cold War by Soviet intelligence, Kompromat. The word is an abbreviation of compromising material, but its meaning is far more sinister. It is the art and science of turning a human being's secrets into a weapon that can be used against them. The KGB's methods were analog: phone taps, stakeouts, and grainy videos from bugged hotel rooms. Epstein's network allegedly digitized and privatized this doctrine. His properties, from the Manhattan mansion to the remote New Mexico ranch to the infamous private island, were not just homes, they were purpose-built intelligence-gathering environments. They were isolated, opulent, and, according to numerous accounts, under constant surveillance. Testimony and photographs have revealed hidden cameras, while recent document releases show his island was equipped with extensive server and communications infrastructure. The objective was total information awareness within his controlled domains. This collection of data serves as the foundation for the most powerful form of control, the honey trap. This classic espionage technique involves luring a target into a compromising situation, often of a personal nature, and recording it.
The material collected, whether it depicts illicit acts, financial impropriety, or simply unguarded, career-ending conversations, becomes a permanent asset. It is a psychological bomb that, once armed, never needs to be detonated. Its power lies in its potential energy.
This creates a state of social, mutually assured destruction. A powerful guest, once compromised, is permanently neutralized. To expose Epstein would be to risk exposing themselves. They are no longer a free agent, but a puppet whose strings are held by the puppeteer. This is the ultimate expression of power, not the ability to force someone to do something, but the ability to ensure they will never do anything to harm your interests. It turns outspoken individuals into silent allies. The goal was not just pleasure or even blackmail for monetary gain. The goal was insurance. It was the creation of a silent army of the compromised, a web of influence held together by the powerful and unspoken threat of exposure.
To build and maintain such a complex architecture of deceit requires a rare and profoundly disturbing psychological makeup. The behaviors attributed to Jeffrey Epstein are a case study in what psychologists refer to as the dark triad of personality traits. This is not a diagnosis of a mental illness, but a constellation of characteristics that, when combined, create a formidable human predator. The first component is narcissism, an extreme sense of grandiosity, entitlement, and a bottomless need for admiration. This fuels the desire to associate with the highest echelons of power, not as an equal, but as a superior. The second is Machiavellianism, a strategic, cynical, and manipulative view of the world. The Machiavellian mind sees other human beings not as peers, but as pawns on a chessboard, to be positioned, sacrificed, and exploited to achieve a long-term goal. The third and most critical component is psychopathy, characterized by a profound lack of empathy, a callous disregard for the rights and feelings of others, and an absence of remorse. This is the trait that allows for the cold, calculated exploitation of the vulnerable, without a flicker of guilt. These traits, fused together, enable a terrifying capacity for compartmentalization. This is the psychological mechanism that allows an individual to live two completely separate lives, moving between the world of the predator and the world of the philanthropist without any internal conflict or cognitive dissonance. Because to the psychopath, the victims are not human, they are objects, abstract tools for gratification and leverage.
This psychological profile culminates in the most dangerous state of all, a God complex. This is a belief that one is so superior, so intelligent, and so important that they are above the moral and legal codes that govern ordinary humanity. Reports suggest Epstein was fascinated with transhumanism and eugenics, the pseudoscience of improving the human race through selective breeding and technology. He allegedly spoke of seeding the human race with his own DNA, using his New Mexico ranch as a base for this bizarre ambition. This was not just a desire to break the rules, it was a desire to rewrite the very rules of human existence itself, with him as the architect, a chilling, ultimate expression of narcissistic grandiosity. It is a comforting illusion to quarantine this story, to label Epstein a singular monster and his world an alien landscape. But this is a profound error. His methods, stripped of their extravagant details, are a masterclass in the dark arts of power that are practiced on a smaller scale in institutions and social circles everywhere. The Epstein case is not an anomaly, it is a blueprint, it is a warning. The Kompromat principle extends far beyond espionage. Any information that provides leverage is a form of it. In the corporate world, it can be the knowledge of a colleague's mistake, held in reserve,
In politics, it is the opposition research waiting for the perfect moment to be leaked. The honey trap is not always literal. Sometimes it is an offer of promotion, a position on a prestigious board, or simply the intoxicating allure of access to an inner circle, a lure that compromises one's integrity in exchange for status.
Likewise, willful blindness is not a sin confined to billionaires. It is present in every organization that values silence over truth, every family that ignores a problem member, every system where speaking out carries a higher cost than staying quiet. We are neurologically and socially conditioned to seek familiarity and comfort and to filter out information that threatens our sense of security and belonging. The lesson from this dark saga is the necessity of radical vigilance. It is the wisdom to understand that charisma can be a mask, that philanthropy can be a tool for reputation laundering, and that unchecked power inevitably corrupts. It is the courage to ask the uncomfortable question, what is the true source of this person's influence? What do they gain from my compliance? What is the price of my silence? To spot these dynamics in our own lives, we must learn to look past the dazzling facade and examine the underlying architecture of power. Power is a system. It has rules, mechanisms, and vulnerabilities. Jeffrey Epstein did not create these rules. He was simply a master pathologist of the system, a predator who understood its weaknesses with chilling clarity. He understood that the powerful do not fear justice as much as they fear exposure, and that secrets are the most stable currency in a world built on image. The uncomfortable truth is not that monsters exist. It is that the systems we build, our hierarchies of status, our worship of wealth, our desire for access, create the perfect habitats for them to flourish. They thrive in the shadows cast by our own ambition and our own fear. The veil has been lifted, and we are left to confront the unsettling reflection of a world where influence is a commodity and complicity is a survival strategy. The shadows are not empty. They are full of unseen systems. If you wish to understand their mechanics, subscribe to UmbraDecode. He didn't just want pleasure, he wanted insurance.